So I have finally got my hands on a Battlehawk. It is incomplete. It is broken. But happily, it was not ridiculously expensive. And until I got this, I had forgotten why it was, I think, that when I got this when I was little, I was actually quite disappointed by it. And the reason I'm disappointed by it is because I think A, they were horribly breaky, but B, they were very, very small compared to what I would have expected. Got to bear in mind, this is the primary mothership, effectively, of the Terrahawks when they are in Earth's atmosphere. So you get another Terrahawk, the Terrahawk, I know, confusing, which should rest just on the top here. Now, it's missing on this example because, as I say, it's kind of a spares and repairs, but it does have all three of its landing gear here, which is relatively unusual. So it's got that going for it at least. And it does have both of its winglets here, although I believe one has been repaired, but it is missing, unfortunately, this winglet on this side is not here, it's broken. So it's not a perfect example by any stretch of the imagination. And this battle tank is the battle tank that comes with Battlehawk, but I had this separately because bizarrely it came with this one, and this one has no wheels. So I think somebody actually did a mock-up of. I mean, it's not a bad match for the original at all. As you can see, the size-wise and everything else is pretty good. So I can only assume that someone did a 3D print of a battle tank, but obviously it can't sort of reproduce the wheels or whatever, because what it should have is wheels and tracks that look like this, and that's heavy because it's metal, whereas this one is not metal. But that being said, there would be something to be said for it being plastic, because actually plastic would allow you to lift it in a much safer fashion, and I'll come to that in a moment. But what I want to demonstrate to you is why you might be disappointed by this. So let me show you here the large-scale Hawkwing in the box. And as you can see, the Battlehawk, conceptually, is about the same length, but the Battlehawk is a much, much bigger vehicle in the real world. So you would expect that it would be, I don't know, twice the size. But the problem that I suppose they had was that A, they had to fit it onto shelves, and B, they wanted to make it die-cast. So if you were to make it die-cast at the sort of scale that it ought to be, you would be talking about an incredibly heavy object for a child to wander around with. But knowing me, if I knew what the size of the other vehicles in the range was, I would have been offended by the fact that this, supposedly the biggest vehicle, was actually, relatively speaking, small compared to the other craft that were nowhere near the scale and the size of the Battlehawk. And I think that's why I thought that you got a bit shortchanged by it, basically. That's what I think I felt. So, in terms of what it actually does, it does have a fair bit of functionality to it, in fairness. Not all of it makes a vast amount of sense, admittedly, but you can see here that there are sort of payload doors which are used to store this battle tank. So the battle tank just slots in there, and then when it's flying around, you can press one of these. I think they're supposed to be Zeroids, I think, but basically you press. Well, actually, this one, it's the one on the other side, and then that would hinge open, and the battle tank would deploy. Now, also in here, which is also often missing, So in fairness, this one does actually have it in. It's quite difficult to get it out, but you can see here, this is the recovery hook for the battle tank. So the battle tank has a little black bracket on the top of it there, and this would slot in there. You would scoop it up and off you would go in flight. Now, it doesn't really work. I'm not quite sure. There's another switch on the top here, which I think would also deploy the battle tank. But I think it might also do something with this. I'm not convinced that this is attached as it should be. If this were a perfect version, I think it might work slightly better. There's also a rear hatch here, which again, if it were working properly, you would move that to the outside, and that would immediately just sort of drop down. As it is, it's not really playing ball with me terribly helpfully, but I did get into it last night, which is what allowed me to find the hooks were still there. I could kind of feel that they were, and I could hear them rattling around. But as I say, this is not really wanting to play ball with me in terms of letting me show it to you. And I've got to be careful with this because these are very prone to being breaky. In fact, I can't remember if this was the one I'm thinking of where it had been repaired already, but I think in fairness, these are all original. So the benefit of this for someone might well be in spares and repairs. I'll just show you this functionality as well here. It's got this little ramp that comes out of the nose. So I believe that the Hudson Rolls Royce would come out of there in the series and come down, but I don't think Hudson was part of the Battlehawk set. So I don't think it was actually included, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it's nice to have it, if only because it reminded me of why I felt a little bit sort of hard done to when I got it, because I say it wasn't really what I was expecting it to be when I got it, because it just wasn't the right sort of size compared with everything else. And I think the Battlehawk's a little bit Marmite. You either sort of love it or you hate it, because it doesn't look like it should be very flyable. It's not like Thunderbird 2, where you get the feeling that the whole thing would be a lifting body. Battlehawk doesn't really have that sort of characteristic about it. I also don't like the fact, and never did, that you can't get rid of the landing gear. These landing gear that I said were prone to snapping off are stuck there. You cannot do anything to them. That's not a thing. So, as much as it's nice that they're there and then you can land it and roll around on them, that you can't get rid of them again. So even though they look like they've got sort of, flaps that would allow them to disappear, they can't. Now, again, I don't blame them for that necessarily, because I think at this scale you couldn't really do anything else. But it is a bit of a shame, because you would have hoped that they'd have thought through it and maybe done it that little bit bigger. Because then you could have had a decent-sized battle tank as well. This battle tank is smaller than the battle tank that comes as a separate battle tank. So it's not even the biggest battle tank example you can get, for this very reason, because it's scaled naturally to fit with this Battlehawk. So it's not the biggest. And again, by the same token, the Terrahawk that should sit up here is nowhere near this, I don't think from memory, the size of the Terrahawk that would come on a separate card, because again, it's scaled down so that it can fit onto this Battlehawk. Now, I could be wrong about that, because I don't have one of those as an example to show you, but that would be my hypothesis, that actually the prices that are being charged for this on eBay are just crazy. There are, thousands of pounds for this in a box, and yet it is not the most impressive of the Terrahawks vehicles by a long shot. So maybe it's because it's so breaky that it's nice to get it in a box, because then you will then get both the battle tank and the Terrahawk and a complete intact Battlehawk, because it's very difficult to get it otherwise, because as I've discovered with this one, all the plastics on it are very, very breaky, probably because the rest of it is so metal. So all of these wings are not metal, they're the plastics, they're the weak points. All of these are weak points, but the rest of it is metal. So well, I say the rest of it is metal. Actually, I'm saying that, but actually, although there is weight to it, I'm actually sort of hesitant to tell you exactly which bits are metal confidently, because the whole thing does feel overall relatively plasticky. It's kind of. I think these panels here, they're very cold to the touch. I think they probably are metal. But overall, it still doesn't give you the impression that it's a massively quality toy, which from Poppy and Bandai is saying something, even sort of in this era. But it was part of the overall suite of the Terrahawks craft, and it was the sort of the big hero craft. I always thought it was quite silly that it didn't. I mean, it used to sort of airdrop the battle tank, then sort of move away. So in that sense, it wasn't that vulnerable. But I often wondered whether it was really sensible to take something that size and that slow into a battlefield situation. But anyway, that's for discussion on another day, perhaps. I don't know. But it's nice to finally have one. But it does make me chuckle because you see these prices for it, and I'm thinking, yeah, but it wasn't actually that great. And it wasn't until I had it in the hand again that I remembered why I thought at the time it wasn't that great, because I think I'm pretty sure I had it, but I'm equally pretty sure that I got disappointed with it pretty rapidly for all the reasons I've just mentioned to you, because it had a teeny tiny battle tank and a teeny tiny Terrahawk, and it just wasn't as interesting as some of the other bits and bats, and I hated the fact that the landing gear stayed put, that you can get rid of them. That I know for a fact that would have irked me at the time. It's one thing having little tiny wheels as you know, so that you can roll things around. But it's another thing again when you've got huge landing struts with wheels that you just can't get rid of. That would have annoyed me, I think, even as a child. So again, it's just one of those things. It's like, why did we not get a slightly bigger, better version of it? But the simple reality of it is none of the Terrahawks craft was scaled to take any of the action figures from the series. So it just wasn't that, Bandai didn't do that sort of thing. Kenner and Palitoy, those sort of companies, they probably would have thought along those lines and done something bigger, or at least done it differently. Maybe they would have scaled the figures down and scaled the ships up a little bit, sort of met in the middle. But it is what it is. It's a very distinctive craft. Anyone who knows the series will immediately know what it's supposed to be. So I have no issue with that in terms of the overall design, not at all. But it's just one of those things where I just sort of think, no, could you not have done that a little bit better? I don't know. But I would be interested to hear people's opinions on it, and people's opinions on quite why people think they can get like £12,000 for it on eBay, because that's crazy. At the time of recording, there is actually an auction going which started at a remarkably sensible point. And I'm wondering now how bonkers that one is going to get before it ends, and whether or not I actually want to join in with it, because I would like to try and get one in the box, because I think it would round off an overall collection really nicely. But by the same token, I don't think it's really worth, quality-wise, the price that people are asking for it. And they are coming up fairly often. It's not like it's super, super scarce. They might be super scarce in absolutely mint condition, I'll give you that, because obviously this is an example of one that isn't in that sort of state. But, there are still quite a few turning up boxed. So, I don't know. It doesn't happen for any of the other vehicles in the Terrahawks range, is the other thing that confuses me. So I don't understand why the Battlehawk is getting this special treatment just because it's the Battlehawk. It's really odd. So it is what it is. And so if you hear me screaming, it'll be because I missed out on the auction. I might get another opportunity again another day. You never know. So on that note, I will leave you there. But I hope you've enjoyed having a look at the Battlehawk. And I do want to assemble all my bits and bats of Terrahawks at some point, but I have got a couple of other bits coming as well. So I'm not quite there yet with the sort of the full range. So I will come back to you in due course when I've got a few more bits and pieces together. But do like and subscribe in the meantime, and I'll see you for another one soon. Cheers for now.